Hello loyal subjects, today I am going to be doing a review for you. I'm going to be reviewing The BANE Chronicles by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Rees Brennan and Maureen Johnson. If you don't know, this book is 11 short stories following the life and adventures of Magnus Bane. It is a companion book to the Shadowhunter Chronicles, so Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices, and we have stories from the present going as far back as the 1700s. I loved it. I would recommend, if you are a fan of either of the series, then you should definitely pick this one up. So I'm just going to go through and give you a brief synopsis and my thoughts on each of the stories. The first story we have is What Really Happened in Peru. This is by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. This one is basically Magnus, Ragnafell and Katarina Loss all going to Peru over the years. This one was probably my least favourite of the stories. It got better as it went on, but at the start it was just kind of like, and then this happened, and then they did this, and then that guy came along. It was interesting to see some backstory on Magnus and his parents. Same with the other warlocks. Yeah, I would give that one maybe a 2.5, 3 stars. Yeah. The next is The Runaway Queen by Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson. This is Magnus in Paris during the French Revolution. He's helping this guy rescue Marie Antoinette. She's a character in there. She doesn't really do much, but she's there. This one was a lot better, I think, than What Really Happened in Peru. It was really fun. It wasn't too deep, or it didn't go into too much character depth for as compared to like some of the other stories. But Axel, the guy who gets Magnus to help the royal family, so much of Alec in there. It's not even funny. Like, he looks like him with the black hair and the blue eyes, and just the way he is described, and Magnus is just like, oh my god, he's perfect. Yeah, I could definitely see traces of Alec in that guy. Wouldn't be surprised if they were related, honestly. So I would give that one about 3.5 stars. The next is Vampires, Scones and Edmund Herondale by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. This one is set in the generation before the events of the Infernal Devices in London. We get to meet Will's father and his mother, and as well as a bunch of the other Shadowhunters who are like parents or predecessors of the characters in the Infernal Devices. This one is really good, I think, one of the best ones in there. We get to see how the Accords came about, so how like life was for Downworlders and Shadowhunters and their interactions. Shadowhunters are such bitches. Like, they're a lot better now, I guess, but so arrogant. Such entitlement is present with them. The way they treat Downworlders is just astounding, in my opinion. They constantly insulting them to their faces while they're supposed to be having a meeting to conduct a contract for a peace treaty. It's like, this is a two-way street, guys. Takes two to tango. Seeing all of the Shadowhunters there and just knowing like who they are, what they become, it's kind of just being like, fuck you, you're cool, fuck you. I really liked Will's parents. You can see so much of Will in Edmund, and Lynette, she was really cool, spunky kind of chick as well. Camille was also in this story. This was kind of leading up to her and Magnus's relationship, and she was actually kind of cool in this story, so I'm like, stop it. Stop being cool. You're a bitch. No. So I would give that one about 4 stars. Then after that we had The Midnight Air by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. Oh my god, that one was so good. I loved that. That is set during the time period of the last hours. So in the early 1900s, we get to meet James Herondale, who is Tessa and Will's son. We get to see middle-aged Will, which is awesome. You can really see where Cassandra Clare is going to be putting characters in certain positions, especially because, like how the Infernal Devices was mildly based off of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This series is mildly based on Great Expectations. In terms of Great Expectations, you can really tell who's going to be what character and where they're going to be placed, but there's still so much more to be said. It got me so much more pumped for the last hours than what I was. Because also James, he has this weird ability because he's Tessa's son, and we forget, like, usually they've never had this phenomenon before because usually warlocks can't have children, but Tessa can. And so he is a shadow hunter, but at the same time he's got these other powers where he can become a shadow and shadow travel, like a Hades child. But yeah, that one was really awesome. Next we have The Rise of the Hotel Dumort by Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson. This one follows Magnus in New York in the 1920s. This one, I felt like not a lot went on at the start. It was kind of like, yeah, we're in the 20s, alcohol's illegal, flapper dresses, all that kind of stuff. And then the climax, so when we got up to it, it was kind of like, that was pretty random. Like, yeah, demon void, that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was still good, but it wasn't one of my more favourite ones. It kind of just was like, yeah, okay, come on. But we do kind of start to see where characters are and how they get to be in the positions that they are in the books. So that was cool. And we saw Camille again. Yay. Then we have Saving Raphael Santiago by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. This one follows Magnus during the 1950s in New York, and it's basically when Raphael first becomes a vampire and how Magnus is hired by Raphael's mum to try and save him. This was a really good one. It offered us a lot of insight into Raphael's character because during City of Heavenly Fire we get these constant references of how Magnus and Raphael have this history where Magnus saved his life. So I feel like after reading that, everything makes a lot more sense and we get a better grasp on Raphael's character, because most of the time when reading The Mortal Instruments, Raphael is kind of like just this douchey vampire who keeps trying to kill Simon, and so we don't really like him all that much. Like, he kind of redeemed himself in Heavenly Fire, but just seeing his origins, I think, added a lot more to like his story arc. So yeah, I really liked that one. Then we have The Fall of the Hotel Dumort by Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson. This one was really good. It's basically the 70s, I believe, and all of the vampires in New York are acting really funky because this is during the big drug craze, party drugs, like heroin, LSD, all that kind of stuff that was going around a lot in that time. And the vampires, they can't like get drunk or take drugs or anything, so they get humans to take the drugs and then they feed from them and ingest the drugs through their blood. And so they start killing people, and Magnus and the werewolves are trying to stop them, and Camille is obviously the head of the vampires, so Magnus is trying to help her. And oh, it was really crazy because there was this massive blackout and riots in the streets, and oh, it all kind of accumulated to just this mad frenzy that went on. What bothered me for a bit was, we know in Fallen Angels, when Magnus first sees Camille again when she's captured by the Shadowhunters, he tells Alec that he hasn't seen her since the 1800s, and when I was reading these, I was like, you liar! You lie! You did see her! You had moments with her! But in the end, he ends up getting his memories of Camille throughout the entire 20th century wiped. So it really was like the last time he'd seen her was that ending that we saw of them in Clockwork Prince. Complicated, but at the same time was very satisfying because, you know, he's got nothing, Camille has nothing to give him anymore. Like, she is just a memory of the past. Alec is his future. Then after that, we start to get into the fluffier things. We have What to Buy the Shadowhunter Who Has Everything and Who You're Not Officially Dating Anyway by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. This is set during the Mortal Instruments on Alec's 18th birthday. Magnus is at his loft and he's doesn't know what to get him as a birthday present because they've kind of been dating for a little while at this point, but they aren't too serious yet. So it was really cute seeing him freaking out, not knowing what to get, and at the same time we've got this demon in the background that he summoned for this client, just, you know, having casual conversation with. I really love reading about Alec from Magnus's perspective, because a lot of the time, especially during the start of the books, we didn't really get a great grasp on Alec's character. So since we're reading about Alec from Clary's point of view, a lot of the time we didn't really get to see him progress that much. But when we read about him from Magnus's point of view, it's a lot more central to his qualities that other people might not necessarily see, and I feel like when we read about the two of them together, we really get progressions of their character developments quite quickly. So I really like that one. And of course, I love the ending. It was really cute. Then we had The Last Stand of the New York Institute by all three of them. This is set during the time of the Circle. So when Valentine and all of his people had just started out, they're like 19, 20, really young, when everything was in full swing. Seeing all of those people at that age and knowing like what becomes of them in the future, just, oh, it was so, like, not weird, but like different. Seeing them in that light, like they're going around killing downwelders, just being massive douche canoes. We see Stephen Herondale for the first time. Definitely my least favourite Herondale. Not nearly as cool as any of his relatives. Let's just put it that way. We also got to see Maris and Robert. There was that little reference to Maris's son, Alec. Nice. Then we also had Luke back when he was Lucian Greymark, when he was still a shadow hunter, before he was a werewolf and all that. And he was massive dick. Then he went from being a dick to being really nice. And so I'm like, Luke, slow down. You're losing me here. You're losing me. And obviously we saw young Valentine. He really wasn't that much different than he is in the Mortal Instruments. Like, he's really great leader, very charismatic, but at the same time we see that streak of like weird torture and how he becomes like this mad scientist in the future. And then at the end of it, after the uprising happens and all that, we see Jocelyn come to Magnus's apartment and Tessa is there, which is really cool. And she has baby Clary with her. And so we find out in Heavenly Fire that Tessa was the person who was the warlock who like did the spells that all Shadowhunter children need to be cast on them. And Jem was also present. So yeah, that was cute. It was pretty action-packed. Magnus, he has to deal with a lot of shit, but throughout this you really see he's such a great guy, Magnus. Like, even after all the shit that he's been through and all that's been done to him, he just has such a big heart, and it's not in his nature to like be spiteful, which I just think is very noble of him. And then we had The Course of True Love and First Dates, just by Cassandra Clare, because you cannot put Malik into anybody else's hands. That story is Magnus and Alec's first date right before the events of City of Ashes. Oh, it was so cute. So funny as well. If you haven't read Kissed, which is the short story on Cassandra Clare's website, it's basically Alec and Magnus's first kiss, when Alec goes to Magnus's apartment and he thanks him after Magnus like saves his life. I feel like reading that and then reading this short story would give it a better context, and you can see like the build-up of the Malik relationship. These are like the foundational bricks of what is to come in the Mortal Instruments. So many great moments, just when you have two such different personalities like Alec and Magnus thrust into this situation that neither of them thought would come around. It's just, the interaction is so funny. When they're on the subway and those guys start rapping the butt song. They're at the restaurant and everything's going shit. And Magnus is like texting under the table to Katerina to come and get him. But then they have to go rescue the werewolf girl. And Alec's like, oh, this is a real emergency. I thought this was one of those situations where you get a friend to like text you and get out of a shitty date. What? I didn't know people still did that. Haha. So obviously I loved that one. I think that one was my favourite of all of them, and there were some good ones in here as well. Then we have this little bonus story at the end that's included with the physical copy of the book. It's called The Voicemail of Magnus Bane, and it's by all three of them. And basically it's just all of the voicemails on his phone after the breakup at the end of City of Lost Souls, and you can see how it just gets progressively like angrier and more desperate and more hilarious. I think my favourite of all of the voicemails is definitely Simon's. If you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to read it to you. Hi Magnus, it's Simon. You know me. Well, you called me Soames last time we spoke, but we've hung out. I am calling to sorry if this is out of line, suggest that you maybe take Alec back. I think it would be really good for morale. Honestly, Alec was really horrible to Clary when they first met, and if he turns all cranky again, I don't know what Clary will do. I guess what I'm saying is we'd all appreciate it if you took one for the team. This message probably seems selfish and also crazy. I honestly do feel bad for Alec. He's a good guy, much less annoying than Jace. I've always felt that, like, given the opportunity, we could be friends. Maybe bros. Maybe we could be bros who shoot arrows together. It may at this point be obvious that Isabel forced me to make this call. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say. Here's the thing. Alec looks really bad. Ow, Isabel! I mean, he's looking fine. He's a very handsome guy. Much better looking than Jace, if you ask me. But he's obviously really down. Anyone can see it. And then he goes, if you could give him a break, that would be great. Okay, I guess that's it. Beep. Just hilarious. Hilarious. That one was the most laughs. Okay, I guess that's all I have to say about those. You should definitely read this if you're a fan of the Mortal Instruments and Fatal Devices, and anyone who's a big fan of Magnus Bane will definitely like this as well. Also, I'd just like to add, at the start of every story there is a little comic strip right here about one to show one of the scenes. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So I will see you next time. Goodbye.